They asked if anyone else had felt it, noting that the human radiated an aura deeply repulsive to their kind. One of them recoiled at the suggestion that the human might possess a nauseating, divine power, insisting it was impossible and questioning how a mere crawling human could hold such capability. The dragon tribe's prophet proclaimed he saw beyond ordinary sight and was prepared to entrust the future of their race to those few mortals, while others immediately accused him of being reckless. Someone gasped sharply, warning there was no time to hesitate. He warned that a darkness would transcend space and time and devour everything, declaring that this mortal was their last hope. He urged them to follow, restating that this was their final hope, while others balked at the idea of entrusting the fate of the dragon race to a mortal. At long last they breathed a sigh of relief, admitting it had not been easy but celebrating that they had reached Windleaf Main City. They boasted that, aside from Night Xiao, they should be the first players to arrive at Windleaf Main City and affirmed their excitement. A terrified voice screamed for help, stammering as they realized what it might be, a giant dragon. Someone begged to be saved, claiming the Judgment Dragon was capturing people, while another snapped for them to stop yelling and mocked whether anyone was strong enough to rescue them. Another panicked that they had never seen such a colossal dragon before and noticed it appeared to be carrying someone, wondering if it could be Night Xiao and finding the notion impossible. They reasoned that even reaching level 100 would not involve anyone with a dragon of the caliber, asked their leader what to do and whether to follow it, and were sharply reminded that it was the Judgment Dragon. One sneeze from it and they would all be wiped out. A dragon boss suddenly appeared outside Windleaf City, one of the major cities, and an unlucky player was seized in the chaos. The news spread like wildfire. Prominent figure Qingfeng Cueju suggested the captured player might actually be the fabled night god. The community buzzed with the same question: what does it mean to be caught by a dragon? Ordinary players reacted one way, top players another, and a seasoned leaderboard veteran offered a shocking perspective. Rumors ran through the crowd that Night Xiao had been taken by two dragons. Players reacted with disbelief. Many had never even seen a dragon, yet they speculated that if Night God was already dealing with dragons it would explain his absurdly high level. Some joked that the dragons must be power leveling him and marveled at that meteoric grind. Envy flared. If they had that kind of help, they imagined they'd be level 30 by now, and nobody could comprehend how Night Xiao was already interacting with such high-tier creatures. Several observers noted the two dragons looked strangely familiar. One voice reminded the crowd of the players' past so-called good deeds, a pointed suggestion that they had been warned not to provoke the dragons in the first place. Panic swept the scene as someone admitted the grim truth: they had stolen one dragon's egg and looted the other's lair. With those confessions, the situation suddenly appeared desperate and hopeless. A dragon addressed the mortal with blunt menace, asking if they felt no fear and daring them to kill or flay it if they wished. The crowd acknowledged the terror. Anyone who claimed not to be afraid of such a threat was dismissed as a fool. Then another dragon softened its tone and told the mortal there was no need to fear. It revealed that the dragon egg taken was the last hope of their race and that bringing the thief here was meant to grant a great opportunity. The captives' shock turned to recognition as they realized the egg had a name, Little Gray. The name provoked outrage among onlookers, who declared it disgraceful to call a dragon Little Gray. Despite the indignation, the egg, or the dragon associated with it, clearly liked the name, much to everyone's surprise. He warned that there wasn't much time, snapped everyone to attention, and ordered them to get down to business with a terse final approval. They invoked the dragon god's name, calling it aloud twice as a fierce, ceremonial cry. He begged for mercy, stammering about what they intended to do and insisting he had only been joking earlier. He pleaded to be spared, promising to do whatever was asked, insisting he barely knew the person involved and denying any role in the dragon egg theft. A blessing from the dragon clan was bestowed. He received a portion of the dragon god's power. On the Doomsday Forum the headlines ran hot. Dacia Nation continued to dominate, filling the entire top 100 of the level rankings. A shakeup left a new second place. Genie Yeshing had surged forward, showcasing elite assassin skills and rocketing to level 14 to replace Mingyue Ryue, widening the gap. Night Xiao still held the top spot but hadn't gained a level in 3 days, prompting rumors. Ever since being taken by dragons, Night Xiao had been stuck at level 30 for over 3 days. What secret lay behind that stall? People asked what was happening and what had really become of the night god, but no one knew. He was always elusive, like a dragon, they said, and judging by his usual pace something unexpected had probably occurred. The idea that he'd been taken by a dragon drew stunned laughter and nervous curiosity. Was this an extreme plot twist, and did dragons behave that way? They sneered and wondered aloud whether Knight had cut a shady deal with the dragons to leap levels. Now that he had reached the top, they said, he must be paying the price with public humiliation. They accused him of using tricks to seize first place, and when the truth surfaced they insisted punishment followed. One of them even claimed a friend had inside information. Night Xiao was finished. the friend insisted, gone for more than a few days, maybe for good. The others shot back in disbelief, asking who this friend could be, since even elite players like Manhwa Ryue professed ignorance and no one knew the source of that claim. One voice dismissed the whole argument as pointless to explain to someone narrow-minded, then mocked the idea of secret masters hiding among commoners and top-tier players, calling the notion nonsense and pointing to the obvious gap in skill. At that moment a system chime announced that the protagonist had been blessed by the dragon god and become stronger. He winced as a sudden headache swept over him. He scanned his surroundings and wondered where he had appeared. It looked like a level 40 zone, and the 2 dragons that had been there were gone. The system classified him as a god of fortune and listed a string of innate talents: endless fortune, stingy beyond compare, great fortune, unmatched charm, and the overwhelming power of the god of fortune, each presented as rare and potent boons. Despite that dramatic dragon god blessing, he felt no obvious change in his attributes. He checked his skills in hopes of a difference, but those too showed little immediate effect. He froze when a new skill appeared: Money Shield. The system explained that every 100 gold could be converted into 1 shield point, and he quickly realized he held 1.81 billion gold coins. As the god of fortune, money functioned as his armor. Activating the skill would create a shield equal to 1% of his current gold. There was no cooldown and no duration limit. The barrier even blocked true, special, and attribute damage and was immune to shield breaking, execution, and instant death effects. The cost came in gold. The currency would decrease proportionally as the shield absorbed damage. He stared in disbelief, stunned by how absurdly powerful the skill seemed. He blinked at the line that confirmed no cooldown, his mind reeling. This was insane, pure dumb luck, he thought, unable to hide his shock. His thoughts raced. If the god of fortune class had just gained new talent skills, then what did that imply for the beast god controller? He scanned the beast god controller's innate talents and felt his stomach drop. The list showed multiple high-level innate talents: divine power, source of magic, a divine beast set, a beast god aura, command of the beast god, and finally an ability called infinite beast mastery, which explicitly removed any limit on the number of beasts the controller could command. The revelation hit him: infinite beast taming, no cap on summoned creatures. He remembered that even royal beastmasters were confined to 3 core pets, and rage and disbelief rose in him at the thought that this newcomer faced no such limit. He could only mutter in stunned frustration, convinced he must be dreaming. He threw himself before the ancestral dragons in awe, pledging from that moment to follow their guidance. Breathless with excitement, he vowed to burn incense for the 2 elder dragon gods and to honor his lineage back 8 generations, overwhelmed by how incredible the moment felt. The scene shifted to the trial hall, clearly marked as a level 30 challenge. A system prompt identified him as Lord Knight Shao and offered the abyssal-level trial. He accepted, and the interface asked him to wait as the challenge prepared. Onlookers wished Lord Knight Shao luck, and he nodded in thanks, accepting their encouragement as he prepared to proceed. He shivered against the biting cold, mentally kicking himself for not wearing more layers when the temperature hit him harder than he'd expected. A thunderous impact rattled the air. He flinched and realized how close he'd come to disaster. He berated himself for dodging instead of using his shield, then immediately remembered that the shield was indeed in his possession and could have blocked the attack. He froze in stunned disbelief, unable to process what had just happened for a breathless moment. He urged Old Hui forward, shouting for the companion to unleash ferocity. Old Hui answered with a fierce, rallying howl that charged the scene with raw energy. A notification chimed to confirm the victory. He had slain a white-furred mutant yeti, a formidable opponent whose defeat marked a clear and decisive success. He stared in disbelief that a single bite had ended the fight and asked Lao Hui if he had seen it clearly. Lao Hui admitted he had not, leaving them both stunned by how quickly it fell. They called him Old Hui. He was a celestial dragon, a mythical grade monarch of the dragon clan, registered at level 30/0.00%. His base attributes read like the stats of a living mountain: strength 70-66, constitution 69-75, spirit 75-89, ability 69-49, with enormous HP and MP pools backing each trait. As the clan's sovereign, he bore the dragon god's blessing and absolute supremacy over his own kind. He dealt double damage to other dragons while taking half the damage from them. His innate talent, absolute suppression, marked him as a predator of lower-tier foes. Having carried the luck of the dragon race, he only grew stronger. The entry listed a -30% damage modifier against mythical creatures and -50% against non-mythical ones, and he took 50% less damage from all sources. His mythical bloodline granted a phenomenal physique, every level up boosted all attributes, and his regeneration rates skyrocketed. HP and MP regeneration showed a flat 500 plus an additional 1% per second, while his maximum HP and MP were each doubled. Old Huey's skills were brazen in their brutality. Dragon Emperor's breath was a single target inferno, blazing flames that inflicted true damage equal to 500% of his strength and spirit combined, could not be dodged, had a 55-second cooldown, and cost 2% MP. His ultimate, Wrath of the Dragon Emperor, triggered a berserk annihilation. He would unleash indiscriminate true damage within a 500-meter radius, listed as dealing damage equal to strength, constitution, %, but at a grave cost. The skill carried a 30-day cooldown and, once used, permanently shaved 5% off his attributes and forced him into a 5-day sleep. He also wielded a world-shaking roar, a fearsome ability that made the earth tremble and stunned all enemy units within its radius for a debilitating interval, ignoring tier and type, with a 30-second cooldown and a modest MP cost. As the Dragon Monarch, he could silence magic itself. Dragon Emperor's fangs suppressed the spells of the 5 closest enemies, and a demon dragon roar struck magic damage equal to 500% of his strength and spirit while imposing silence, an ability with a heavy MP cost and long cooldown. Finally, under the power of the Dragon God, he was outright blessed. All his attributes were doubled again, effectively a plus 100% boost. Observers could only reach the same blunt conclusion: Old Hui was impossibly broken. Explosions thundered across the battlefield as everyone froze, bewildered by the sudden surge of monsters and wondering why so many had appeared at once. A guttural roar filled the air while a comrade urged Old Hui to unleash his fury, pushing him to charge into the fray and slaughter the foes without mercy. Half an hour later, an automated chime confirmed the kill. They had slain the formidable Seeker of the Abyss, a king-tier foe, an achievement that rippled through the ranks. One spectator scoffed, derisive at the king-tier label and warning them not to grow arrogant, reminding everyone of the crushing defeat they had suffered before. A system announcement declared that Daxia player Night Xiao had passed the level 30 Abyss advancement trial, the first hero ever to do so, and had been granted an epic item, the heroic Radiant Stone, while Daxia's Warzone score rose. The crowd exploded. Some hailed Night Xiao as a long-prepared deity and demanded reverence. Others cursed in disbelief, stunned that he had been swallowed by a dragon and yet returned, noting Daxia's growing advantage. Another voice laughed in triumph, insisting they always knew he wouldn't fall so early, marveling that even the level 30 Abyss trial had been cleared and declaring his potential bottomless. Plans shifted immediately. They would return to the city so someone could meet this intriguing newcomer in person. Once brought under their command, the speaker said, the true game would begin, an order acknowledged without question. A new notification reported the emergence of the third Abyss stone fragment. Its grade was unknown and undetectable, prompting stunned murmurs about how many fragments could possibly exist. He found a heroic radiant stone, an epic, rare material suffused with radiant energy drawn from the heroic stone itself. The narrator noted that only truly powerful heroes could possess such a thing and that it could further enhance a heroic emblem. Realizing its worth, he understood this stone was genuinely useful and that he could strengthen his heroic emblem once more. As people called out, he heard someone warn Lord Night Xiao to take care. A brief farewell followed before they parted ways. They arrived at Fengye main city. He noticed the city felt unusually crowded. Someone nearby remarked that he had been missing for several days, explaining part of the sudden bustle. He urged haste to get his gear appraised, but a tight-packed crowd made him wonder aloud why there were so many people gathered. A vendor barked for the next customer and then snapped at a supposed first-class citizen, ordering him to get in line and stop bothering him. He froze, taken aback by a sudden reaction. The crowd brightened at the sight of him, greeting him as the god of fortune and ushering him forward with eager hospitality. Others nearby reacted with indignation, questioning who this man was and complaining that being a first-class citizen did not entitle him to cut ahead of everyone else. Someone's attention snapped to the emblem in his possession. They recognized it immediately as a heroic emblem and insisted it be enhanced first. The appraiser's hands trembled as he prepared to enhance the emblem. He muttered about how valuable it was and how a mistake would ruin him, all while admitting aloud that the item didn't look impressive at first glance, just a shabby emblem, which only heightened his anxiety about performing the enhancement correctly. The emblem turned out to be a legendary-grade heroic emblem, a symbol that marked its bearer as someone who had passed hell-level trials and earned the Empire's highest honor. Having already been enhanced twice, it had grown even more powerful, granting massive base attribute boosts, improved overall resistance and a charm bonus. It also carried an overpowered passive that activated when the bearer fell below 30% health, significantly raising strength and spirit. The appraiser recoiled in disbelief, overwhelmed by its brilliance and exclaiming that the legendary equipment was blindingly bright to his eyes. A new legendary item appeared, but the narrator noted it didn't look like much of an upgrade. Observers stared at the men who held it, whispering that he might be the famed Night Xiao, and if it was him, it explained how he managed to clear an Abyss-level trial. The crowd erupted into frantic pleas and offers. Some begged to add Night Xiao as a friend, claiming 10 years of fandom. Others demanded to know where he got his gear and promised to pay any price. A handful begged him to carry them through content, while one loudly boasted about his sister, calling her a school beauty tier and offering to set them up. Another shouted a ridiculous claim about being Night Xiao's long-lost brother-in-law. One overly eager fan promised to send pictures of his sister in black stockings and even joked he would wear them himself if Night Xiao refused to add him. Amid the chaos, someone finally tried to restore order, warning everyone not to disrupt the shop's business. He thought staying low-key was impossible in that uproar and asked the shopkeeper to appraise the other items as well. The shopkeeper agreed briskly, assuring him that satisfaction was guaranteed. Shouts of astonishment filled the room when people realized every piece was dark gold gear. Their excitement bordered on disbelief. One buyer admitted his heart couldn't handle it and asked the shopkeeper if he planned to keep all the pieces. He begged to buy a few, then shifted into a brag, claiming his father owned 3 publicly traded companies and that money wasn't an issue. He only wanted 1 or 2 pieces and pleaded the seller to oblige. The forum thread titled Apocalypse exploded with outrage and excitement when someone claimed the legendary Yi Xiao had appeared in Fengye City. Users flooded the comments, insisting that everything he identified had turned out to be dark gold, ranked gear and urging others to come and pay homage to the Grandmaster. Skeptics warned the report might be unreliable. A previous alert had sent crowds chasing a fake, leaving one poster furious, but then someone posted on-site photos taken outside an appraisal shop to the east of the city and gave coordinates. Instantly, the crowd split between doubters and believers. One user declared they were racing to the location and another announced they were returning to the city at once. A single fan flared with feverish determination, asking where the great Yi Xiao was and insisting that today they would plead to become his disciple. They boasted that if anyone was going to attach themselves to him, it would be them first, taunted other rivals, and proclaimed they would follow God Yi without hesitation, even declaring, with desperate adoration, the desire to have children with him. He sighed in frustration when he realized no one had followed him. The small, resigned sound betrayed how alone he felt in that moment. Exasperated, he wondered what to do next. The constant glare of attention had become exhausting, and, weary, he finally asked the person before him if they were Yi Xiao. He snapped a curt question, impatient to know their purpose, his tone sharp and demanding. The others hurried to calm him, insisting they meant no harm and that they had only come to discuss business matters with him. When he clarified whether they were proposing a deal, they confirmed it was about dark gold, ranked gear. One of them answered confidently that, indeed, they intended to buy and promised they could make an offer he would find impossible to refuse. He laughed loudly, scoffing at the notion. Only if they could produce hundreds of billions of gold coins would he feel unable to refuse. He repeated the staggering amount as if testing it, then mocked them, suggesting their expectations were still trapped in the mindset of a game. He paused, surprised that this newcomer was suddenly more conspicuous than he was. The man had been absent in his previous life, yet the assassin stirred a faint recognition. In that past existence, the figure had been one of the top killers, refusing factions, moving alone, and the memory of that lone, infamous assassin surfaced sharply. The other man shifted tactics, speaking plainly. Having watched him dominate the rankings, he saw immense potential and expected great achievements ahead. Still, he warned, the protagonist had not yet grasped how profoundly his in-game talents could translate into real-world advantage. He urged him to continue, eager to test the limits of the performance, and made it clear he was no dream seller. He promised tangible rewards, money, status, women, anything the man desired, if he proved willing. Then he pressed the choice on him directly, expressing a sincere hope that the men would accept and join their ranks. Another voice, calling him brother, acknowledged the approach for cooperation as recognition of skill and voiced appreciation for that respect, trailing off as he prepared to take the next step. But he bristled at the younger man's arrogant air. That cockiness annoyed him. To teach a lesson, he announced he would force a manual respawn, a blunt corrective meant to humble and calm him. Surprised, another party reacted angrily at the thought of being attacked, warning them to think carefully and implying grave consequences should anyone act rashly in that place. Without warning, a devastating fireball was launched, its displayed power marked at 3,346, an overwhelmingly strong attack. Amid the blast, someone cried out and berated the target for talking too much. Shock rippled through the crowd. Could he really have slain the young master? People froze as others ordered them not to move, reminding everyone that killing was forbidden inside the main city and that no one could assume responsibility for what might follow. Someone pointed to the money and equipment scattered on the ground and told bystanders to take them as compensation, warning them not to pursue the attacker. He had no future. They muttered in horror at the idea of murder within the main city and concluded the perpetrator must be insane. The commotion drew sharp rebukes. Who was fighting here? How shameless! And then the blare of sirens, signaling the arrival of the main city guard. A sharp voice cut through the crowd, ordering everyone to freeze. An astonished officer demanded to know who would dare commit murder in the main city, incredulous at such brazen violence. One man coldly confessed it was him, taunting the stunned onlookers that someone could kill and still remain unnervingly calm. A patrolman realized the victim might be a first-class citizen and immediately suggested there must be a misunderstanding. He apologized for their earlier recklessness and respectfully asked the men to explain what had happened so they could file an official report. The killer dismissed it as nothing serious, claiming someone had threatened him so he cleaned him up, while the guards recoiled at the idea that a vagrant would dare insult a first-class citizen. The officers insisted the city's safety was their responsibility and begged him to let them handle any future incidents, urging him not to soil his hands. They repeatedly reassured him that it was fine, thanked him for his understanding, and prepared to withdraw if there was nothing more. Several people reacted in stunned disbelief, barely able to accept that such a thing could actually happen. A strangled, unintelligible cry escaped from someone nearby, adding to the chaos. Subordinates immediately berated their leader, demanding to know why they hadn't arrested the men and scolding him for ignoring the basics. The gunman needed to focus on the details that mattered. Another man pointed out that the victim was exactly the young first-class citizen the Duchess had been desperately searching for, insisting that reporting this would earn them a promotion and praising their leader once he grasped the implication. Later, the scene shifted to the Duke's mansion. Someone at the mansion cried out in disbelief, asking if they were being mocked and reacting with visible outrage. A servant demanded urgently why there were still no updates on Yi Xiao. Messengers burst in, calling to Madame that they had news about Lord Yi Xiao, prompting a stunned, eager reply asking if it was true. Madame immediately pressed them for his whereabouts, demanding to know where he was now. At the resurrection point, an agitated voice demanded why no one had acted against him, accusing him of killing someone in the main city and trailing off in alarm. He admitted that he had lost his composure. After all, the opponent was already level 30, so it was natural he couldn't match him. He had expected this outcome and blamed himself for giving the men the illusion that they were equals. He vowed he would soon make the challenger realize how foolish he'd been to take him on. He asked whether the other had stealth skills and ordered him back to the city to retrieve the gear he had dropped. The subordinate immediately agreed and called him young master in deference. Another voice said it was unnecessary, he hadn't taken the gear, but from the scene it seemed the other would no longer need it. Then someone cried out in sudden alarm. A warning snapped through the crowd. This was the respawn zone, not the main city, and surveillance here was far tighter. They had no business fighting here. He cautioned that unless the root was removed, the problem would return, like grass that grows back with the spring breeze. A sharp, terrified cry split the air. One man spat an oath and warned everyone not to move, threatening that if anyone acted the casualty would not be the only one to die. The attacker spoke coldly, declaring that killing one or killing many made no difference to him. He did not care. Someone shouted the name Yi Xiao, calling out urgently for him. Another demanded an explanation and warned them not to take things too far, threatening that if anything happened to him not only the attacker but all his family and friends would pay the price. He accused the men of boasting even as death loomed. The attacker dismissed the threat as meaningless to him and then cried out, unconcerned. Onlookers gasped that the great Yi Xiao was killing someone at the respawn point and questioned his sanity for carrying out a killing inside the respawn zone. Panic rose as someone cried that the young master had not respawned but had been forced to log out. Onlookers froze and cried out at the sight of the black-robed judge, demanding to know who had the audacity to kill here. They warned that even Yi Xiao's strength could not shield him from the black-robed judge's verdict, and in that moment it was clear Yi Xiao was in serious trouble. Someone realized the judge had been alerted, and another admitted that with their current power level, confronting the judge directly would be a catastrophic mistake. A voice stepped forward claiming responsibility for the killing and offered to go with the authorities, arguing calmly that the arrangement was only fair. An officer barked an order to seize the accused, and the guards moved in to take him away. Servants burst into the room in panic, repeatedly calling for the young master to wake as fear gripped them. Confusion swept the crowd as someone demanded to know what had happened to Boer, then received the devastating news that the young master had been killed. Rage erupted as a family member demanded to know who had killed Boer and vowed that the killer's entire family should perish alongside him. A court official addressed Yi Xiao by name and rank, accusing him of violating Fengye City's laws by committing a killing inside the respawn zone and demanding an explanation. Yi Xiao answered that the victim had brought a group to harass and threaten him, and he claimed he killed to defend the dignity owed to a first-class citizen. The court announced that Yi Xiao had confessed to blocking the respawn point and killing the men 5 times in succession, prompting whispers that it was excessive and terrifying. If Yi Xiao chose to target someone in the game, that person was effectively doomed. Not even the respawn point could guarantee safety. Silencing the uproar, the judge declared that, for the killing and given it was his first offense, Yi Xiao would be exiled for life from the Eastern District and forever forbidden to return. The advocate addressed the judge urgently, insisting that Yi Xiao had only killed a vagrant who had dared to insult his dignity. He argued that, both emotionally and legally, the act had been justified, then trailed off as the courtroom tension shifted. A voice protested that the sentence felt unfair, invoking the Duchess's rank as if that alone should sway the court's judgment. Judge Iter rose and offered a formal greeting to the lady, acknowledging her presence with measured respect. The lady waved away ceremony, declaring that Yi Xiao was her friend and that she would not tolerate any injustice against him, then turned to Mr. Iter, Layla's name hanging in the air as a plea for intervention. Judge Iter paused to consider, admitting the sentence had been rushed. He cited Fengya city law that a vagrant who offends a first-class citizen faces execution, and on that basis he ordered Yi Xiao's handcuffs removed and demanded his immediate release. Someone asked the judge if they might leave now that Yi Xiao was cleared. Judge Iter granted permission without hesitation, and the group prepared to depart. They told Yi Xiao to move out with them. Layla agreed promptly, and Yi Xiao offered a quick bow of respect before they left. The lady thanked Layla profusely, while someone remarked that the kid had escaped harm yet again. Layla brushed it off modestly, calling it nothing. She revealed that she had heard he was captured by a dragon and had sent people searching everywhere. The relief at finding him safe was genuine, and Yi Xiao admitted he had been taken by 2 dragons but claimed it had turned into a blessing because he had acquired some useful items. Excited, the woman insisted he come home with her so he could recount every adventure, and Yi Xiao agreed. It had been a long time since they'd seen each other, and he had plenty to tell. There was a moment of incredulous confirmation, then a quick shift to practical matters as someone asked Layla whether Mr. Stir was still at the mansion. They wanted to consult him about the second-class mission. Hearing about the second-class mission, the group reacted with stunned disbelief that he had already reached level 30 so quickly, their surprise underscoring how rapidly his progress had advanced. In the main hall of the Duke's mansion, he realized it made sense that anyone able to generate enough spiritual power to fill 5 crystal orbs would level up so quickly. The sight left him quietly feeling inferior. Layla told Master Stir he was being too modest, yet she insisted she still needed his counsel about the second-class mission. Master Stir admitted that second-class missions for hidden professions were notoriously obscure, so rare that one could travel the entire continent without finding a clear answer. The domain of the gods remained far too mysterious. Layla asked anxiously what they should do and whether Yi Xiao might be unable to obtain his second-class mission. Master Stir reassured her, advancing a hidden class required the god's recognition, which, if he wasn't mistaken, pointed to the Lost Temple. Layla was amazed that he actually knew about the Lost Temple. She admitted she'd only heard rumors of it and didn't know its location, but she agreed that among Apocalypse's mysterious sites, the Lost Temple ranked at the top. Others praised Yi Xiao for his wisdom and knowledge, explaining that the Lost Temple allegedly appears like a mirage, one moment standing before you, the next vanishing without a trace. A system-like notification confirmed they had accepted the class change quest to search for the Lost Temple. The place was deeply mysterious, the second advancement promised to be difficult, and the matter would need careful planning. Layla told Yi Xiao to come find her when he was finished, and he agreed. They stood staring at a map of possibilities, exchanging frustrated remarks about the Lost Temple and how searching for it felt like trying to find a needle in a haystack. Before they could start the search, Layla urged postponement. There was something far more urgent. Yi Xiao protested, but Layla warned that, if she was right, tomorrow would mark the first strange invasion in an event they called the Apocalypse. Yi Xiao echoed the alarm. Layla confirmed that a portal to another world would open and an endless tide of strange creatures would pour out from the abyss. She went on, when that gate opened, every living thing in Fengya main city would be slaughtered and the city's buildings would be razed to ruins. Yi Xiao reacted with disbelief and asked if they should flee. Layla shot down the idea of protecting the entire city, insisting that relying on him alone was a fantasy. Faced with those creatures, she found herself thinking of only one person who might handle the threat. Without hesitation, Yi Xiao called out for Sister Tao, asking if she was there. Sister Tao answered with her usual brusque scorn, scolding him as a bothersome brat and noting that his summons never led to anything good. She accused him of finding another unlucky dragon's nest. Yi Xiao reassured her that there were no dragons this time and that the crisis was right in Fengya City. They wouldn't be venturing anywhere else. Sister Tao pressed him for confirmation. Sister Tao downplayed the danger in the main city and sarcastically asked if she was supposed to storm the city lord. Yi Xiao deflected the theatrics. It wasn't that serious. He simply asked if she could guard his property in the West District for one night starting at midnight, offering the same pay as always. He reacted in disbelief that it could be that simple and suspected she might be trying to trick him, addressing Sister Tao and reminding her they had been friends for years. He gave in and promised to show up on time that night. Sister Tao approved and told him not to be late. Another voice then offered a sarcastic congratulations, remarking that she had managed to trick someone again. Lao Hui bristled, objecting to the accusation and insisting it wasn't a trick at all but something done for Sister Tao's own good, accusing the other of not understanding. The other replied with weary sarcasm, then resolved to use the remaining time to level up once more and become fully prepared for the strange invasion. On the Apocalypse forum, someone reported that Yishao had killed another player 5 times in a row at the respawn point, an action that resulted in that player's death in real life. The post asked whether such terrifying power allowed him to act without restraint, warning that an unknown force so powerful flagrantly violated the law and constituted an open challenge to social order. It condemned the blatant disregard for human life and called urgently for real identity verification, insisting Apocalypse must not become a place where players do whatever they please and urging everyone to support verification and fully cooperate. He wondered if they were making noise just to try to expose his identity, dismissed the attempt as childish, and decided he'd better get some rest because tonight might be a long one. He jolted awake, disoriented. He hadn't even fully fallen asleep and was already pulled back into the game by another forced entry. It felt exactly like launch day, and confusion tightened his chest when he found he couldn't log out. Panic flashed at the thought of being trapped for 9 hours, but he forced himself to think, even if he couldn't escape, as long as the monsters stayed out of the starter village everything would be fine. With that cold logic he decided it was safer to stay inside. He noted Sister Tao's punctuality as always and observed the city's unusual stillness at this hour. He wondered whether she had called merely to chat or to announce fresh profits, the familiar mixture of amusement and curiosity tinting his thoughts. He told her not to be impatient, promising that soon every one of his shops in the West District would be under her control. He reassured her to relax, as long as he remained, no brick or tile would be lost. With Sister Tao present, he admitted, he already felt more secure. He urged Sister Tao to cast a protective buff, but his command died on his lips when something unexpected appeared and froze him mid-instruction. An alarm cut through the air. A strange invasion had begun, the kind of threat that set every nerve on edge. Panic swept the city as officials declared a level 1 alert. No one was allowed to leave, mages were ordered to the walls, and people were urged to evacuate immediately. The streets filled with shouted orders and frantic movement. Cries to run rose above the chaos, an abrupt, terrified shout that underscored how suddenly normal life had dissolved into pandemonium. Someone marveled at how she had predicted the strange invasion. They noted that the creature's current level wasn't yet dangerous, but warned that escalation would be catastrophic. They urged Sister Tao to believe in herself, reminding her that she was a divine-level sorceress capable of handling it. He realized with dawning alarm that a level 100 boss lord had appeared. Admitting defeat for the moment, he conceded that he had once again walked straight into her trap. He complained that whenever she sought him out it was never for anything simple. He reminded her of her vow to protect every brick and tile of his West District, the promise hanging between them like a solemn pact. She unleashed 5 heavenly lightnings, an overwhelmingly powerful, rare divine attack that struck with earth-shattering force and shifted the battlefield in an instant. Everyone gasped as Sister Tao felled a Lord-class boss with a single strike. One onlooker snapped in disbelief, protesting that he was not a plaything. Alarm spread across the field as more enemies poured in, and to everyone's horror, flying elite bosses began appearing. A leader barked at the gawking youngster to stop staring and help, and Xiao Hui immediately fell in line to assist. Someone called Xiao Hui forward, declaring it was his turn and urging him to move out. The battle erupted into monstrous roars and terrified screams as creatures charged. A panicked voice urged haste, warning the line could not hold much longer and pleading for help before the enemies closed in. A system notification confirmed that a strange elite-level boss had been killed, broadcasting the hard-won victory to everyone present. Someone warned Xiao Hui to be more careful, reporting that another shop nearby had just been destroyed. A new wave was bearing down on them. Voices urged Xiao Hui to strike fast as the next surge closed in. System alerts rang out repeatedly as bosses fell one after another, elite and normal foes alike, each announcement amplifying the frantic pace of the fight. Another confirmation came through for a slain normal boss, and one of the fighters chuckled, pleased that boss kills were the quickest way to gain levels. One teammate entrusted Sister Tao with defending the West District while he and Xiao Hui went to hunt more bosses. Another protested at being expected to handle everything, demanding higher pay, and was met with a resigned agreement. Their excitement peaked when they discovered that the drops even included epic-grade gear. Among the loot lay an epic Devourer's ring, unidentified but clearly valuable. Someone seized the moment to urge Xiao Hui to hunt more bosses. Outside Fengye's main gate people were fleeing in terror, crying for help and begging not to die. One man clung to his younger sister, terrified at the thought of living without her, and vowed that if he had to, he would take the strange monsters down with him. A deep, guttural groan echoed across the chaos, a final ominous sound in the midst of the turmoil. A panicked player shouted that he couldn't hold on any longer, begging the boss to flee while urging Clear Breeze and Bamboo Great Storm to seize any chance to escape. He warned that the bosses were too powerful and they were no match. Another voice urgently told the leader to go immediately, to take Xiaoyu and the others, explaining he could only distract the enemy for 5 seconds and calling out to Storm as he prepared to buy time. Someone screamed in terror, imploring the leader to leave and not to worry about him, urging everyone to hurry as he braced for the worst. The group frantically checked on Storm, calling his name and demanding that he wake up, worried whether he was all right. Despair swept through the players as one muttered there was no hope left and asked, in a trembling voice, whether they were all going to die here. A stunned exclamation rose from the group as they watched the boss fall from a single strike, disbelief and shock rippling through them. They peered at the victor and realized, with surprised recognition, that it appeared to be a baby dragon. The players were stunned that such a young dragon could be incomprehensibly strong, and one of them whispered a prayer of gratitude as if their plea had been answered. Someone called to Xiao Hui, pointing out that there seemed to be more bosses gathering over in that direction. A voice broke into awed recognition as they identified the figure. It really was the famed great Yi Xiao, and their disbelief left them momentarily speechless. Someone called after Yi Xiao, demanding that he wait, then hesitated with a puzzling pause, unsure what to do next. The group asked what was happening and rushed to thank Yi Xiao for saving them moments before. They addressed him as Grand Master and vowed that, if he ever needed them, they would do anything and even risk their lives. Yi Xiao brushed off their gratitude, saying not to worry since he had merely been passing through, and he suggested the West District was relatively safer now. If they wanted to stop hunting bosses, they could head there. The players gushed that Yi Xiao was incredibly cool, with one joking that if she were a woman she'd have his child, only to be insulted back as too ugly. The banter ended quickly as someone called for action, telling everyone to pick up gear and items because they were heading to the West District. A player sneered that killing common monsters was a waste of time for Xiao Hui, punctuating the remark with a low growl of contempt. They urged Xiao Hui to move toward the city gate, insisting that the true battlefield of the strange invasion lay there. They remembered Yi Xiao's claim that the West District was far safer, but that made his patrol beyond the city gates all the more puzzling. Observers suspected he had gone out specifically to hunt powerful bosses and gain levels. Everyone watched in disbelief as Yi Xiao's level rose again, the familiar notification sparking renewed attention across the field. Shock rippled through the crowd when they realized Yi Xiao had jumped to level 35, only yesterday he had been level 31. And the rapid climb left onlookers terrified and wondering how many bosses he must have slain to advance so dramatically. A frantic murmur ran through the city as people detected another disturbance coming from the direction of the main gate, drawing their attention away from Yi Xiao's gains. At the main gate of Fengye main city, the scene was catastrophic, walls shattered and carnage everywhere, a full-scale massacre that left defenders reeling. They identified the threat as the Skeleton King, an enigmatic Lord-class foe whose level read as 100. An opponent of terrifying power that no single defender could hope to face alone. A desperate messenger reported to Lord Iter that the gate wall had been completely destroyed, archers could not hold, and healers were overwhelmed. The front line was collapsing and the troops pleaded for orders on whether to retreat to the rear. Lord Iter wasted no time and commanded an organized retreat, his soldiers responding immediately to pull back and regroup. Amid the chaos a sudden, thunderous impact cut through the clamor, prompting startled confusion among the defenders who strained to locate its source. Hope surged when a divine-level expert intervened at the gate. Soldiers who had feared the worst rallied, shouting that salvation had arrived and charging back into the fray. One confident newcomer teased that they had been summoned in a panic and, amused, urged Sister Tao to devise a way to get them close enough to the level 100 Lord Boss, insisting they already had a method to take it down. Others exchanged incredulous glances, calling the boss unusually strange for a level 100 Lord-class enemy and expressing doubt that anyone could face such a foe. The newcomer insisted with absolute certainty that their plan was genuine and reliable, leaving no room for skepticism. Sister Tao agreed to the risky plan, promising to send them off properly by granting a powerful buff before they advanced, preparing the final push with confident precision. He appealed to Sister Tao, arguing that as a divine sorceress she should clear a path so he could face the boss directly. She met his challenge, admiring his nerve, and promised to open the way for him. An explosive command pushed everyone into motion. The order to charge was shouted without hesitation. The crowd erupted in praise for Sister Tao, their voices full of awe as they declared her amazing as always. They turned to Lady Dorothy, saying that with her help Fengye City could be saved, and ordered her to take her troops to defend the north side while the others handled the threat. Lady Dorothy acknowledged the assignment and accepted the responsibility. Someone warned Lord Iter that a level 30 tamer was attempting to assault the Lord Boss but urged him not to worry. Following Lady Dorothy's orders, everyone pulled back to the north zone. An elder officer told the brat that the fate of the battle now rested on him. One warned the brat not to get him killed, refusing even the burden of carrying his corpse. The brat brushed off the threat with confidence, guaranteeing he would not die and declaring that the hunting hour had begun. They urged the brat to move at once, pressing him to act without delay. Someone told Sister Tao to calm down and simply watch, signaling that the next move should be observed rather than rushed. A brutal massacre unfolded across the battlefield, its violence shocking those who watched. A brutal execution followed, swift and merciless in its finality. He laughed triumphantly, exclaiming that he had done it as the reality of his victory sank in. Everyone was stunned, unable to believe that the brat might have felled that Lord-class boss with a single strike. The system broadcasted a world announcement: the Chinese player, Yi Xiao, had killed a level 100 Lord-class boss, achieving the first Lord boss kill. The message listed large rewards, reputation rose by 1,000, attribute points increased by 200, and China war zones gained 1 point, and congratulated the player for reaching level 40. Spectators scrambled to confirm the boss's defeat, stunned that anyone could one-shot a Lord boss. The crowd buzzed when someone realized Yi Xiao had just left the city to confront a boss. They marveled at his strength and called him a grandmaster, wondering if he ever took disciples. Jealousy and excitement mixed as they complained the game was unfair. One fan declared they would start a fan club and be Yi Xiao's #1 supporter, even while admitting the great man did not accept just anyone. Among the spoils were rare finds, an epic-grade Divine Protector shield and an equally epic Starcaller's staff, both with unidentified effects, plus 2 mysterious blazing stones used as crafting materials. Their rarity hinted at immense potential, even if their true powers remained unknown. As expected from a Lord-class boss, the rewards dwarfed typical monster drops. Everyone sensed the haul belonged on a completely different tier. A companion asked Lao Hui if he had found anything valuable, and he revealed that he had indeed uncovered an artifact. They teased Lao Hui about his luck and admired the discovery. The artifact proved to be the frenzied horn of the destroyer, its effects still unidentified. Everyone agreed the rewards from this strange invasion were even better than those from a legendary level quest. The strange monsters began to retreat, and relief flooded the survivors as laughter and cheers broke out. They had made it through. With the invasion over, people erupted in victory cries, repeatedly celebrating that they had survived and won. They checked on the governor, urging him to wake while calling for Turn to help lift him. Determined, they vowed that no matter what had happened they would not allow those strange creatures into Fengye City. An officer noted that an hour had already passed since the invasion ended. He woke to impossible news: the invasion was already over. While he had lain unconscious, Lord Yi Xiao and Lady Dorothy had driven the attackers back, and the city was already being repaired. Voices around him asked for Yi Xiao as if searching for the hero who had turned the tide. The governor admitted he had not expected another talent like Lady Dorothy to appear so suddenly and save Fengye City at its most desperate hour. He ordered Turn to make arrangements. He wanted to meet Yi Xiao in person and express his gratitude. Turn acknowledged the command and moved to organize the meeting immediately. The host politely ushered the pair inside and offered heartfelt thanks, showing genuine relief and appreciation for their timely aid. The governor spoke with deep gratitude, declaring that without their bravery Fengye City might not have survived the disaster. He hailed Yi Xiao's deeds as another miracle and, on behalf of all the citizens, extended his sincerest thanks. Those present demurred modestly, insisting that it had been mostly Yi Xiao who personally defeated the Lord-level threat. A polite chime marked an official increase in favor. Aaron's standing with the governor had risen, and he had earned the title, Friend of Fengye. Sister Tao laughed it off, calling the praise exaggerated and insisting it had been nothing more than an unusual invasion, no great feat. Lady Dorothy urged the governor not to dwell on thanks and steered the conversation back to business. With nothing further to discuss, she announced she would return to the Supreme Temple to attend to other matters. The governor replied with a warm farewell and advised her to take care. Layla asked the governor if he had summoned her. The governor confirmed and explained that over half of Fengye City had been destroyed, the once prosperous East District lay in ruins, and most of the remaining intact buildings were clustered in the West District. Layla requested whether he could spare some properties in that area, but the governor hesitated and admitted he could not make that decision. The governor pointed out that currently most of the properties in the West District were registered under Yi Xiao's name. Layla, surprised that Yi Xiao owned so much of the West District, asked if he would be willing to transfer some of those properties. Yi Xiao answered that he had no objection as long as the price was fair. Another voice remarked that he was going to profit again, sneeringly calling him a brat. One of them responded eagerly, asking Yi Xiao to name his price and promising that the Fengye Bank would immediately prepare the gold coins. Because the governor was so straightforward, they said they would keep a few large corner shops and transfer the rest, then thanked Mr. Yi Xiao. Someone requested the governor's support. The governor invited them to speak, and they explained that the Fengye City incident had already been reported to the royal family and that all the citizens had witnessed Yi Xiao's bravery, implying a significant consequence. They declared their decision to ask the royal family to grant Yi Xiao a noble title. The governor reacted with surprised delight at the news of another honor, calling the title good news and teasingly declaring that Yi Xiao was exceptionally lucky, even calling him a brat. He voiced no objection and pledged his full support for the decision, a response that brought a ripple of approval. Someone asked Yi Xiao for his opinion, and the crowd began to whisper. No one had expected the noble duchess to show such admiration for a young man. Rumors surfaced, could there be something between them? He thanked Layla and the governor with heartfelt gratitude, struggling to find words to repay them. They had saved Fenya City, and such deed deserved every honor. Modestly, he insisted that it was he who should be thanking them on behalf of the whole city. A frantic voice called out for Zhou Hong, pleading for an answer and demanding that he stop joking. The desperation was plain in the shout. The tone turned raw with fear and rising anger. If the situation didn't change, the speaker warned, he would truly lose his temper. He begged Zhou Hong, pleading that he could not die. Outrage followed as someone denounced Zhou Hong as useless, lamenting that she had spent her entire savings buying him equipment only for him to fail against a single strange monster. She stood there, furious and helpless, wondering what she was supposed to do now. A sudden resolve took hold, she could still find Yi Xiao. She blamed Zhou Hong for leading her astray and admitted she had been wrong to trust him. If not for him, things between her and Yi Xiao would not have fallen apart. She realized that Yi Xiao had treated her better than anyone, and she vowed to seek him out. She clung to the belief that Yi Xiao loved her deeply and that a sincere apology would restore their former closeness. Determined, she promised to give him whatever he wanted and to humble herself, convinced that once she lowered her head he would forgive her. She swore she was coming to Yi Xiao and urged him to wait for her, the determination in her voice sealing her decision. He resolved that tomorrow, the moment he logged in, he would transfer to Fenya City. The other regions were too dangerous, and only the renowned Yi Xiao could guarantee their safety. He intended to go himself and called for companions, stressing that traveling in a party would be safer. He was even willing to pay a high price for a city transfer scroll and made it clear the price was negotiable. Bidding erupted for the house. Someone offered 5,000 gold coins, then immediately raised the bid to 10,000, pleading desperately to buy it. Others wondered why so many people were suddenly flocking to Fenya City and observed that it was already late to attempt challenges. It would be smarter to forge equipment first. A voice addressed Mr. Yi Xiao, asking the reason for his visit. Yi Xiao replied that he had come to forge and identify some equipment. The shopkeeper said it would be an honor to serve him, but confessed that the shop had been destroyed. After a brief pause, the other offered a solution. Come with me, they said, and I will lend you a forge and an identification device. The unexpected generosity hung in the air, prompting a small, surprised reaction. They were urged to enter. When someone asked what the place was, the reply was simple and insistent, just come in and see for yourself, Mr. Yi Xiao. On entering, everyone was struck by a top-tier forge. None had expected such a luxurious setup in the West District, complete with identification equipment. The astonished group quickly asked who owned the shop. The proprietor then offered the shop to the identifier. If they wished, they could take ownership, and the profit arrangement could remain the same as before. He explained that it was his property, had been vacant for some time, and their arrival was timely. Deeply moved, the identifier expressed profound honor and gratitude, saying that with so many identifiers unemployed in Fenya City, being taken in by Mr. Yi Xiao would make them eternally grateful. He waved off any thanks, insisting the work mattered more than gratitude. He ordered them to begin by identifying the equipment and pointed at the item, wondering if the other could successfully name it. Could this possibly be an artifact that required formal identification? He admitted that even with their most advanced identification tools he couldn't guarantee a result, yet he encouraged them to try anyway, urging calm and permission to proceed despite the uncertainty. Knowing how much Mr. Yi Xiao trusted him, he steeled himself and vowed to give the task everything he had. Just as he had feared, he couldn't sustain the identification spell. It collapsed mid-process, leaving him frustrated and muttering that identification had failed. Was it really that difficult? They conceded the truth. No one had ever successfully identified such an artifact before. Apologetic and helpless, he acknowledged the complexity and suggested they start by identifying the other 3 epic-grade items instead. The others agreed, confident that the epic-grade artifacts would pose no problem. A gatekeeper interrupted with a curt warning that the governor was extremely busy and had no time for visitors, insisting they leave immediately. When someone asked if the governor was in, a subordinate recognized Mr. Yi Xiao and quickly announced that the governor was in his office, inviting him to enter at once. The governor looked up, surprised by Lord Yi Xiao's unexpected arrival, and asked what he needed. Yi Xiao cut to the chase, stating plainly that he had come to request permission to search for the lost race. He dismissed the lost race as legend, vanished over 100 years ago, as impossible to find as a needle in a haystack, but despite that, he insisted he had to try. Then he asked what was needed of him. He urged the governor to issue a bounty. Anyone who located the lost race would be handsomely rewarded with 5 million gold coins and 3 pieces of rare dark gold equipment. Onlookers gasped at the generous offer and could tell how much it mattered to him. The governor promised to post the bounty immediately. Yi Xiao thanked him, but the governor waved it off, saying it was no trouble at all. The next day a crowd erupted with excitement as word spread that Yi Xiao had leveled up again. Disbelief rippled through them at the sight of him grinding levels once more. A system announcement declared that the Chinese player Yi Han had completed the level 40 Abyss trial, the first ever to do so. He earned an epic grade reward, the Stone of Valor, and his achievement even added a point to China's Warzone score. The special broadcast shocked everyone. Spectators marveled that Yi Xiao had actually passed the trial and called him incredible, though they also noted that reaching level 40 would normally slow his advance. They were at the level 40 Abyss trial grounds. The Abyssal Guide suddenly roared. Others muttered that it had been fortunate he had the money for the shield, otherwise, with the dragon god involved, things would have spiraled and his situation could have skyrocketed. As expected, he found another fragment, his fourth, and he wondered aloud how many pieces would be needed to complete it. A system message from Aaron requested that Lord Yi Han come to his residence at once. There was news about what he had been searching for. The message stunned everyone. There was already news about the lost race. A stunned onlooker froze at the sight. Those facial features and that short stature matched every rumor about dwarves. Convinced this could be the long-lost race, he panicked with excitement, desperate to tell Lord Yi Xiao. Greed and hope took over. Visions of riches, dark gold gear and piles of coins filled his head. He sprinted after the figures, shouting accusations that he had seen them first and calling for Lord Yi Xiao to wait, certain the treasure would be his. A messenger approached the governor to ask about reports of the lost race. The governor acknowledged the rumor and invited the men to explain what he had found. Addressing Lord Yi Han respectfully, the informant reported spotting a group of oddly built dwarves in the forest just beyond the city. He suggested they might be the lost race Lord Yi Han sought. Lord Yi Han, surprised at how close they supposedly were, pressed him for confirmation. The men swore he had indeed found them while hiding in the trees during a strange invasion and admitted that, had Lord Yi Xiao not ended that assault, he might never have escaped. He cut through formalities and demanded without pretense that they take him there immediately. Someone offered to dispatch extra soldiers with Lord Yi Xiao, but Yi Xiao declined the escort. He insisted he could handle the situation on his own. A greedy hunter declared his intent to capture a dwarf alive and claim the reward from Lord Yi Xiao. He proposed a split. He would take the gold while the other took the dark gold gear. The offer was met with scorn. His partner laughed the plan off, telling him to keep dreaming. At first the attackers mocked the dwarves, noting a hammer strike that did almost no harm, barely 80 points of damage, and laughing that such a hit was laughably weak, confident they could easily tank it. Their confidence shattered when a devastating lightning strike hit, twice dealing 87,000 plus points of lightning damage, eliciting a pained cry from the victim. Witnesses recoiled in disbelief at a single blow that dealt over 87,000 damage. They questioned whether these beings were even human, declaring the dwarves utterly overpowered and broken. Among the dwarves, a grim resentment toward humans simmered. One complained that humans were always causing trouble and admitted that merely seeing them raised his anger. Another, Thor, was reminded that passing through human territory had been a mistake, while a calmer voice urged Dulin to settle down. He snapped that he refused to be treated like a circus animal. If it weren't for their tribe, he would have smashed them all to death already. He cut them off, enough, and ordered they leave immediately, urging everyone to get out of there quickly. One of his companions informed Lord Yi Xiao that they were just up ahead and, seeing the situation, urged him to hurry and pick up the pace. The crowd erupted, shouting that the great Yi Xiao had arrived. Excitement crackled through them as they recalled the earlier clash and how insanely strong those dwarves had been. Someone pointed out to Lord Yi Xiao that the dwarves were just inside the forest and suggested they head straight in. He wanted to see firsthand what kind of strength they possessed. A warning came next. Lord Yi Xiao should be careful because the dwarves were extremely temperamental and their damage was insane. Yi Xiao responded confidently that he knew what he was doing. One voice announced that the immediate task was complete and told others to leave the rest to him. Another scolded a reckless youth for walking straight up to them, and the youth quickly acknowledged Lord Yi Xiao, saying he understood. A dwarf recoiled in fury at the human's approach, furious that a human dared come near, and vowed to crush him. Another voice called out to Dulin to wait, hesitating and remarking that the human actually looked kind of pleasant. Thor hesitated, admitting that suddenly he no longer felt like smashing the human. Someone sniffed the air around the human and announced that the scent was overwhelming, strong like a divine artifact, and not just one. They detected multiple divine artifacts on him. Another was stunned by the scent's intensity, worrying that what the human carried might even surpass divine artifacts. Then they picked up a second scent, familiar yet maddeningly out of reach, like a memory of something from a long, long time ago. He suddenly reacted, struck by the unmistakable scent of a god. Memories flared as he recognized the aroma of a great deity. When someone else mentioned it, the recollection clicked for them too. There was no doubt now, the air carried a true godly aura. He asked if others could smell it, marveling at how incredible it was, like the presence of divine relics. He insisted the scent came from divine items and kept repeating that more than one such item was present, a certainty that spread through the group. Overwhelmed, he admitted the scent was nearly overpowering. Whatever item this human wore seemed to outclass ordinary artifacts. Then he paused. Another, subtler scent lingered, one that tugged at a distant memory. He couldn't place it, only that it felt familiar, like something from a very long time ago. Another voice echoed the realization, as if jolted awake. The scent was that of a god, the presence of a great divine being. The mention triggered recognition all around. Everyone agreed it was unmistakably the aura of a god. He blinked in disbelief at the stats, only level 40, which seemed low, yet his numbers were astonishing. He called Thor over, pointing out that despite the low level, the man's spiritual power was off the charts. Observers concluded he must be truly blessed by the gods. The spiritual power emanating from him was overwhelming and left everyone stunned. Someone snapped, bewildered that no one was fighting. Why had they been attacked on sight while Yishao was left alone? The question hung in the air, only to be met by a scoffing reprimand. Daring to debate what made sense in the presence of a god was foolish. He muttered in exasperation, having thought two-faced people existed only in the real world, yet now even these stern, honorable-looking dwarves revealed themselves as traitors. He called them hypocrites, noted that the man always had tricks up his sleeve, and shook his head at the madness of it all. This would be tomorrow's sensational headline, the top player flexing in front of two hulking dwarves. The dwarves demanded to know who he was and why he had come. Yishao, clearly a human, stepped forward and said he had come asking for help. Their suspicion flared. Had he come to commission a weapon? Yishao quickly denied that, explaining he wasn't seeking a forge at all but the lost temple. The dwarves reacted with immediate curiosity and wariness, asking bluntly why he was interested in such a place. He reassured them that he meant no harm and revealed the reason. His class advancement quest required the gods' aid, and the only path to the gods ran through the lost temple. The dwarves bristled. Such matters were sacred, and they would not discuss the temple with a stranger unless he could prove himself righteous. Being asked to prove his righteousness made him laugh. It was a tricky demand, he admitted. Instead, he offered another request. He possessed an artifact and wanted their help identifying it. The dwarves' interest spiked. An artifact. They urged him to show it at once, recalling that the blacksmith back home had failed to identify it. Skeptical, they pressed to know whether Yishao was truly capable of revealing its nature. They scoffed at the human blacksmiths. Dwarves prided themselves on being the finest craftsmen in the world and dismissed those others as worthless. Confident and curt, they demanded he produce the item so they could examine it. On inspection, one of them froze and admitted it didn't look like anything forged. Yishao, surprised, pressed him to explain what he meant. The dwarf described what he saw. No hammer marks or signs of smithing, yet the piece's quality was extraordinary. He concluded it must be a natural artifact, born from the fusion of powerful elemental forces. In plain terms, the dwarf declared, it appeared to be a horn from the god of destruction, either severed or shed naturally. Astonished, he demanded to know where Yishao had obtained it. Yishao answered that he had taken it after defeating a boss during the strange invasion a few days earlier. He froze in disbelief. The youth had actually ventured into the realm of the gods and slain the boss. The elder narrowed his eyes and demanded an answer. Could the youth identify the mysterious object or not? The appraisers insisted identification was straightforward, but they warned it would cost a small fortune and asked bluntly whether he could afford it. Someone asked how much, muttering that the kid looked like he was about to be swindled. They hesitated, then announced the minimum, throwing the group into stunned silence as everyone absorbed the price. They demanded 500 gold coins as the fee. The revelation drew outrage. 500. Someone calculated that amount could buy 50 sacks of rice and confessed they had never seen so much money in their life. A rival voice countered, at least 300 gold coins, no less, otherwise they'd have to find another way. Then, to sweeten the deal, the speaker promised that if the artifact were identified successfully, both identifiers would be rewarded with 1,000,000 gold coins. That promise of 1,000,000 stunned everyone. One man imagined how much rice 1,000,000 coins could buy and joked that it would feed him for a lifetime. To show good faith, someone tossed down a deposit of 1,000 gold coins and promised to have food sent later. The dwarves couldn't resist. They accepted immediately, eager to examine the artifact. Their favor with the party rose noticeably as they declared they would identify it at once and sprang into action. 1 hour later, they succeeded. They identified the Horn of Wrath as a divine-grade artifact, one of the God of Destruction's horns, corrupted by a mysterious force and now radiating a ferocious aura. Reforged by master dwarven craftsmen, it had revealed its true form. Its power was staggering, massive boosts to strength and spirit, a significant vitality increase at the cost of agility, and noticeably higher critical rate and critical damage. Its unique passive halved enemies' HP recovery. Its active power unleashed the horn's lingering divine energy to strike a chosen target with enormous magic damage scaled from the wielder's strength and spirit. It removed damage immunity for 30 minutes, dispelled all high-tier buffs for 5 minutes, and if directed at a building, triggered force destruction and purged divine power. The ability consumed a small percentage of mana and carried a long cooldown. Dwarven workmanship earned heartfelt praise. The artifact's description left them astonished. One of them speculated that the divine power might tie back to the gods, and once the artifact was identified they immediately asked when they would be paid. The owner calmly reassured them that he always honored his debts, then instructed them to pack up and accompany him to Fengia main city to collect their reward. Another protested at being brought to a human city, admitting they had never entered a human main city before. The owner brushed the concern aside and promised a feast in the city, eat all they wanted, and added that he had plenty more artifacts that would need their workmanship. He burst into ecstatic disbelief, saying he had never imagined they'd get to party in the human main city. He ordered his fellow dwarves to pack their things. They were heading to the human capital to celebrate. Someone shouted for everyone to look and pointed eagerly at what had caught their attention. They erupted in awe when they realized Lord Yishao was actually bringing the dwarf race here. Many praised him as a consummate pro player. Though some couldn't fully grasp his plan, others immediately began scheming. Perhaps they could later persuade the dwarves to craft superior gear for them. That possibility suddenly seemed promising. One of them declared the food exquisite, admitting they had never tasted anything so good before. They enjoyed the meal, which had been paid for in full by Lord Yishao. Someone asked Thor to tell them about the lost temple. Thor agreed at once, offering to explain. Thor produced a temple detector passed down by their ancestors and explained that it would react whenever they approached the lost temple's location, enabling them to find it. Still, he warned that the best course was to abandon the idea entirely. One of them immediately demanded to know why. Thor answered that within that place lay a truly terrifying being. When pressed about the creature's nature, Thor admitted that even the dwarves themselves had never actually seen it. He recounted how, long ago under the guidance of the fire god, their ancestors fled the fire temple after a horrifying entity appeared. To entrap it, the fire god forged a realm of extreme flames so fierce that no ordinary person could approach, and the ancestors warned every generation of dwarves to keep far away from the fire temple. He understood, but the protagonist insisted the fire temple was essential for their class change and that they had to go. The other party acknowledged this resolve, praised their courage, and produced 2 items that might help on the journey. One of the items was a temple detector that would react once the bearer drew near the fire temple. The other was the Fire Spirit King's crystal, presented as a reward for having treated the dwarves to a grand feast. The Fire Spirit King's crystal was described as a unique, crimson gem that pulsed with sealed, mysterious power. The dwarves had spent centuries crafting countless fire spirit crystals. Among them, one had evolved into this superior king's crystal. It was far stronger and lasted much longer than ordinary crystals. Its primary effect was to grant the Dance of Flames, an overwhelmingly potent fire resistance buff that reduced fire damage by roughly 90% for 3 hours. The buff did not stack with similar effects, though using additional crystals could extend its duration. The dwarves' craftsmanship drew admiring remarks. Its quality was superb, a truly exceptional item. The protagonist asked if there were more and even offered to pay in gold. The answer came back bluntly, there was only one. They did, however, still have several regular fire spirit crystals. Weaker than the king's crystal, these simpler gems could nonetheless be given in a few if the protagonist needed them. He thanked Durin but admitted it still wouldn't be enough. Then he produced a fire spirit crystal, a rare, dwarf-forged talisman crafted over centuries to aid any return to the fire temple. Its power granted notable protection against flames, roughly 30% fire resistance for an hour. The effect wouldn't stack with similar buffs, though using more of them simply lengthened the protection. That was all he had. He vowed to find a solution himself, told everyone to enjoy their meal, and quietly wished Yishao good luck before turning away to work out a plan. Someone asked the kid what he intended to do about the fire temple. He answered that it was necessary for his class change and he'd go no matter the risk, yet he admitted he couldn't go alone, trailing off in frustration. A thoughtful hum escaped him as he considered the danger and the thin odds, pausing to weigh his next move. He noted that the robe suited him better anyway and smirked at the thought that those 2 old custodians in the temple would soon be no match for him. Someone warned Lady Dorothy that he was coming, and panic rippled through the group as she reacted, asking urgently who was approaching and why everyone was so alarmed. Sister Tao arrived on the scene and was immediately recognized. She groaned in exasperation, accusing them of only calling her when trouble showed up. They fired off a string of possibilities: a dragon, a monstrous boss, while Sister Tao bristled at the suggestion, insisting she didn't look like someone always fighting. They insisted she was exactly that kind of fighter and demanded she stop stalling. She downplayed it, saying there was nothing special, she only planned a simple stop at the fire temple. The reaction was explosive. The idea of provoking a god at the fire temple drew scorn and disbelief. Some declared they were done and walked off, telling her to go on alone if she insisted. Others pleaded with Sister Tao not to be so harsh, offering to negotiate the reward, but another voice cut in, no negotiations. They conceded the fire temple did hold countless treasures, yet warned that even if she wanted them, she wouldn't know where to find them. He admitted he hadn't planned to go, until he unexpectedly received a dwarven compass that pointed straight to the fire temple. Suspicious, he accused the giver of trying to fool him with a fake compass and bristled at the idea of being deceived. On inspection, he confirmed the compass was truly from the dwarves. A temple meant gods would be involved, and he refused to risk a meaningless death. He demanded honesty about the other's reason for wanting to go and even considered changing his class as a consequence. Realizing why the other was so determined, he relented and asked for a week to prepare, then abruptly decided there was no time. He declared they must leave at once and warned that if they didn't join him, he would go alone. Their companion exploded in protest at the sudden departure, demanding discussion of payment and reminding them of the countless treasures said to lie inside the fire temple. Calling out Sister Tao, they told them to think it over as they stormed off. One of them spluttered for the group to wait, insisting that without their protection the others wouldn't even make it past the temple's entrance. 2 days later, in the scorching lands, the heat battered them. The kid asked if they were sure about pressing on and how much farther they had to go, groaning that the heat felt lethal. Another member warned that they were about to collapse too after 2 days of walking and fretted whether the dwarves had tricked them into this march. Then someone noticed the compass reacting more strongly, its needle surged, and they concluded the temple had to be nearby. They were confronted by an elite creature, a molten mud crocodile of overwhelming strength, a level 100 threat that made the hairs on their necks stand up. When yet another mud crocodile appeared, one companion handed the fight to Sister Tao, swearing they would never eat roasted croc again after this ordeal. Someone leapt forward, shouting that they would cool everyone down, and attempted a movement to relieve the blistering heat. Their relief turned to disbelief when they realized the creatures kept coming, far more than expected, roughly 50 of them closing in. The compass began reacting violently, the needle spinning and buzzing. The kids sensed at once that something was terribly wrong. Through the heat haze they saw it, the gate of the Temple of Fire. Even the seasoned members admitted they were seeing that sight for the first time. Alarm swept through the group as the creatures charged straight at them. One of them unleashed a thunder strike, a sudden, forceful attack meant to halt the oncoming tide. Another immediately summoned a protective money shield, a defensive barrier raised to absorb the assault as they braced for impact. He barked at Lao Hui to hold his ground and demanded a breakthrough, calling to Sister Tao for a speed boost and ordering cover as he prepared to charge forward. One of them snapped at the other not to forget their payment, while the other brushed the warning off with a confident reassurance. Gasping for breath, he suffered 2 bursts of fire damage, each searing him for 150 points. Even with a fire spirit crystal, the pain was unbearable. Panic overtook him as he shouted for the brat to run, terrified he would be burned alive. He staggered and let out a choke sound as 2 more fiery hits landed, each costing him another 150 in fire damage, leaving him gasping and in agony. He crowed with terrifying confidence, convinced that nothing could stop him, not even the gods themselves. A sharp, startled scream tore from someone nearby, punctuating the chaos. He took in the scene and noted the temple's utter desolation, its silence heavy and oppressive. A booming voice declared the presence of an intruder and demanded their purpose. The intruder responded that they had come to explore the temple ruins. A sinister chuckle echoed as the voice claimed the intruder needed its blessing to awaken their potential, then ordered them to kneel without delay and taunted them about their hesitation. The voice demanded to know whether a second job change required a blessing, insisting on the intruder's most sincere praise and submission. It promised to bestow blessing and protection if they yielded. One of the group scoffed and called the other a brat, suspicious of the statue's intentions. Could a mere stone want someone to kneel before it? The statue thundered with outrage, declaring such insolence intolerable and proclaiming that kneeling before the great god of fire and craftsmanship, Hephaestus, was the highest honor one could receive. It demanded immediate sincerity and ordered the intruder to kneel at once. A violent burst of fire slammed into him twice, each blow burning him for 1,000 points of damage. Enraged and incredulous, he cursed at the absurdity of a living person being bullied by a hunk of stone. He retorted that what did it matter if it was a god? He had a divine artifact of his own and wasn't about to be cowed. Someone cried out in disbelief to Xiao Hui, stunned that Xiao Hui had stepped out alone on their own accord. Another voice urgently ordered Xiao Hui to get back here immediately. A catastrophic dragon breath attack struck, dealing 99,999 points of devastating damage in a single, explosive blow. He wondered aloud whether the dragon's hatred for the gods had become so deep that it now flowed in their very blood. The demon screamed at the human, furious and contemptuous, declaring that defiance of its will was a grave mistake. It warned that the sealed demon within the cage might break free because of this act, spat insults at the intruder, and vowed to drag the offender down into the depths of hell. An urgent alarm blared, warning that an unknown force was striking and ordering immediate evacuation. Over the noise, someone realized with dawning horror that destroying the statue had enraged a god. A panicked cry ripped through the crowd as people reacted to the sudden, unseen threat. One onlooker feared it might be the god of fire. The thought of fighting a god left them convinced they had no chance and certain they might die in that moment, their panic rising with every quake. The sealed creature lashed out, cursing Hephaestus and declaring the god deserved death, then suddenly froze in confusion as unexpected events unfolded. Everyone around them reacted in stunned disbelief, voices trailing off in shocked exclamations. The temple trembled violently, sending dust and stone cascading as people shouted that the whole structure was shaking. Scattered system alerts and player messages translated into raw panic. Huge sums of gold were being lost in rapid succession, the repeated negative numbers reflecting catastrophic financial drain and prompting cries of desperation. Another system notice signaled an enormous gold loss, amplifying the frantic outcry as people realized their wealth was vanishing. Amid the alarms and losses, someone stood bewildered, unable to comprehend the upheaval unfolding around them. A display of the creature's identity flickered briefly and then failed to reveal details. It named the Kundiing divine phoenix but showed no grade, level, or attributes, implying an inscrutable, immensely powerful entity whose true strength was hidden. Observers noted that all of the phoenix's information was unknown, and someone connected it to a warning Thor had given earlier about a terrifying being sealed by the god of fire. They demanded to know whether the human had smashed Hephaestus's statue. Recalling earlier remarks, a witness explained that the god of fire and the phoenix had been locked in eternal conflict. The human owned up plainly, they had broken the statue. Someone offered grudging praise for the act but warned the human to flee while they still could, predicting grave trouble when Hephaestus returned. In a tense exchange, one person asked in disbelief if Hephaestus would come back. The reply came cold and certain: now that the statue was shattered, the phoenix had awakened and would soon break its shackles. Hephaestus would undoubtedly return before that happened. A final, uneasy question lingered in the air: if the phoenix could one day break the god's shackles, why had it been sealed in the first place? She seethed with outrage, accusing the false god Hephaestus of foul treachery for ambushing her while she was weakened after giving birth to her offspring. Someone reacted with urgent hope, asking if the offspring meant a baby phoenix and wondering where it was, determined that they might be able to save it. A proud voice sneered at the human beast tamer, insisting the speaker's bloodline was far too noble to be managed by a mere human. Another, brimming with defiance, roared that they were not present merely to entertain and urged Xiao Hui to show their strength. Onlookers were stunned, whispering disbelief at how a mere human could possibly command such a powerful member of the dragon race. Another voice exploded in denial, unable to accept that the old dragon god had chosen a human and bestowed the dragon's blessing on them. Impatient and threatening, someone cut off the exchange and demanded to know where the offspring was. Someone offered what sounded like fate. They handed over a guiding feather, saying it would lead the seeker to the Chick Lodge deep within the sea of fire. A scoffing laugh broke out as another realized a mythical beast was calling to them, amused by the summons. A stern warning followed, telling the younger one not to celebrate yet. Reaching the phoenix would now require venturing straight into a sea of fire. Surprise registered as they spotted molten lava ahead, the danger instantly obvious. Undaunted, the rescuer declared they would plunge into the fiery sea if necessary to reach the mythical creature. They breathed a grateful note that the fire spirit crystal granted roughly 95% resistance to flame, otherwise they would already be charred. Yet despite the protection they still suffered brutal, repeated fire strikes and panicked at the thought of being cooked alive. Pushing forward, they urged themselves on, heart racing as they closed the distance and drew ever nearer. Their breath caught as recognition hit, a stunned, trailing realization. When they looked, there was no mistaking it. It truly was a phoenix egg, nestled amid the heat. Excitement bubbled up. One joked that they were a little thrilled and teased Lao Hui about hatching the egg, half seriously musing they could just fry it. Suddenly, someone demanded to know who was there, their shout cutting through the air as distant rumbling answered the call. A cry of pain rang out as a shield cracked under assault. Enraged, the injured party cursed the fire god and vowed the conflict was far from over. Between gritted teeth and agony, someone snapped at the youngster to stop hesitating and run for their life. A panicked voice erupted, ordering everyone to run and angrily accusing the brat of always coming to dangerous places like this just to steal eggs. One character panted in disbelief, gasping that they had actually pulled it off, breath coming in ragged huffs as astonishment washed over them. They could hardly fathom that a mere level 40 mortal had dared to cross the terrifying, molten lava. The thief shrugged the risk off, treating stealing eggs as no big deal and insisting it was not his first time doing something like this. A thunderous voice condemned the wretched mortal for destroying the statue and daring to touch the egg, declaring those crimes unforgivable and vowing to tear the offender to pieces, promising the full wrath of a god. Another voice urged the human to flee, warning that Hephaestus was on his way and escape would be impossible once he arrived. They begged the human to take their child and run as far as possible, promising that when the child grew up he should shred this scum to pieces. Someone lamented that Sister Tao was absent and worried that if the fire god came, even a money shield would burn through their funds too quickly, then desperately asked if there was truly no way to help break the seal. They admitted there was a way, but immediately warned that the listener was too weak. Even the strongest human, they doubted, would be able to help, yet they still asked the person to explain, since one never knows. He pointed out 2 marks that flickered with a black aura, drawing attention to their ominous shimmer. They revealed those were divine seals that had to be broken simultaneously to lift them. One speaker commented that, as phrased, it didn't sound too bad, but the reminder came that divine seals cannot be broken by mortals. Someone suggested using an item, then froze as they realized what it was: the horn of the destroyer, a fearsome artifact whose appearance changed the stakes entirely. Another reacted with stunned disbelief that such a divine item existed in their possession, but immediately noted that one horn wasn't enough. Both seals required 2 divine artifacts to be broken at once. Lacking a second, they admitted they didn't have the solution yet but vowed to think of something. He snarled in disbelief but admitted possession of a cooldown stone that let him unleash the power of destruction twice in rapid succession, then spat a frustrated question about where a mere mortal could acquire such rare, strange artifacts. The arrival of the mighty fire god filled the air with menace. He declared his descent, vowed to unleash terrible fury, and promised that being torn apart by his own hands would be the victim's highest honor, the mortal's divine aura, and that beast would become his nourishment. The mortal resolved there was no other option and steeled himself to act. He could not allow the old fire god to have his way. The cooldown stone activated again, its rare effect permitting an immediate second unleashing of power. He shouted that he didn't care what the opponent called himself. He demanded that the god be shattered. Onlookers fell silent, stunned that a mere mortal would dare such a thing. Someone in the crowd cried out, sharply drawing attention to the human in the center of the clash. Hephaestus thundered for the mortal to offer up his pathetic life, asserting the fire god's claim over the scene. A witness gulped, overwhelmed by the scale of what was unfolding. It was far larger and more terrifying than they had imagined. The great fire god proclaimed his descent and demanded everyone kneel before him, projecting absolute command. Relief and timing collided when an ally noted that Hephaestus had arrived at exactly the right moment to intervene. Another voice roared in disbelief at the broken seal, denouncing the pretender as a despicable false god and insisting it was time for retribution. He declared that only the target's filthy blood would suffice for his vengeance. He spat that only by bathing in that blood could he wash away his shame. A stunned exclamation swept through the crowd as everyone registered the shocking escalation. Another combatant threatened to melt the enemy, gloating over the prospect of reducing them to liquid ruin. Accusations of treachery flew as the god's loyalists denounced the defier as a traitor, insisting he had no right to call himself a god and was utterly unworthy. A sudden, sharp sound cut the chaos, an onomatopoeic crack that marked the violence of the moment. Denial and despair rippled outward as some cried that the outcome was impossible. A worried observer questioned the brutality of the Phoenix of Death's claws, alarmed that it had torn the fire god apart so easily and feared that by stealing its offspring the mortal might soon be clawed to death in turn. Someone invoked rebirth, calling to be remade in fire with divine blood as a grim pledge of renewal. Another hurriedly tried to defuse the conflict, insisting everything had been a misunderstanding and offering to return the egg. The supposed benefactor reacted indignantly, refusing the idea of a mere misunderstanding and insisting they were the one who should be thanked. In the aftermath, someone presented 2 drops of the false god's blood as a gift, offering them up with grim ceremony. A system tag announced divine blood, with its value listed as unknown. The catalog described Hephaestus, the ancient god of craftsmanship and fire who had endured on the lost continent for tens of thousands of years. His blood pulsed with genuine divinity, and the idea that anyone could obtain a god's blood seemed impossible, an astonishing revelation that left everyone reeling. One figure laughed loudly, flaunting mock humility and claiming to be flattered, while simultaneously noting with dry amusement that the other party showed no sign of being impressed. The speaker insisted that the divine blood would serve a single, urgent purpose: it would enable the hatching of their child. The request stunned the listener. They recoiled at the suggestion of hatching the egg themselves, arguing that their own child had still not emerged and pleading that a way must be found to bring it safely into the world. Grateful for the help that had broken the seal, the speaker warned that the place was about to collapse. They urged haste and warned that news of Hephaestus' fall would spread quickly, reminding the other that their child's fate now depended entirely on them. Panic pushed the group to flee immediately, but one voice protested, half joking, half panicked, that they hadn't finished looting. Their complaint cut off as the ruins shuddered and a heavy rumble announced the building's further destabilization. Another scoffed at the notion of treasure among rubble, calling it broken junk. Then, spotting a drop from a fire god, they argued it was too valuable to leave behind, a rare fusion of divine material and loot that would be wasted if ignored. They found Hephaestus' divine staff, clearly damaged but still extraordinary. Even in its broken state it radiated epic power, a massive spirit increase and a significant boost to fire damage, plus a notable reduction in fire skill casting time. Its active and passive abilities were currently disabled by the damage, but everyone agreed that if the staff were fully restored it would likely rise to at least divine grade. Urgency mounted as the structure began to give way. The order to evacuate went out again. The others scrambled, replying in hurried agreement as they gathered their belongings and raced for the exit. A terse system alert cut through the chaos. An avatar had been lost. One voice tried to minimize the alarm, insisting it was only an avatar and questioning the overreaction. Another countered sharply. That avatar had been tasked with guarding the Phoenix of Death, and if the speaker's memory served them correctly, that entire world had already collapsed, making the loss far more dire than it first appeared. One of them thundered that the Phoenix of Death had been central to their plan, they had sacrificed their divinity to seal it, and now, with the world apparently collapsing, they demanded an explanation from Hephaestus. Another voice erupted in fury, calling Hephaestus a fool and declaring that his incompetence deserved death. A third presence cut through the chaos, ordering them to stop arguing immediately. They reminded each other that after years of draining, they should have amassed enough essence. Now their priority had to be finding the source of the catastrophe, and they affirmed that they understood the task. Outside the fire temple, the ground trembled with rumbling shocks as onlookers gathered at the chaotic scene. People feared the fire temple was on the verge of collapse and worried aloud that the brat might have been trapped and killed inside. To everyone's astonishment, the brat turned up alive. He protested to Sister Tao that she had been wishing for his death, bewildered and indignant at the accusation. Eyes widened as someone pointed at a towering, otherworldly creature and stammered in disbelief, recognizing it as the dreaded Phoenix of Death. Another voice demanded to know how the brat had come to be bound to something of that caliber, stunned by the impossible bond. The creature spoke gently to a mortal, entrusting its child to their care and promising they would meet again before bidding a temporary farewell. The mortal replied hesitantly that they would, then gasped in shock as the magnitude of the moment sank in. Observers marveled that the brat had not only survived the fire temple but emerged carrying a phoenix egg. One of them praised Sister Tao while boasting that luck had always favored them, convinced this was heaven's blessing. A taller woman urged the brat to show what else he had taken from the temple, scoffing that she had good fortune. When the brat revealed more items, she prepared to inspect them eagerly. When they examined one of the items, everyone froze. It was divine blood, an unmistakably sacred and dangerous relic. The air crackled as a divine infusion took effect. The brat's latent professional potential awakened and advanced, and the immersion in that sacred blood conferred the divinity of the fire god. Simultaneously, the brat's other class, the god of wealth, had its potential awakened and progressed. Both classes leveled up, leaving everyone in stunned awe at the raw power and rarity of the transformation. He sneered a curt congratulations at the brat. When the brat's god of wealth class advanced, he discovered he had leveled up too, a smug thrill running through him. The new god of wealth class showered him with overwhelming benefits. Its passive, endless fortune, quietly increased his on-hand gold by 2% every day, a steady, unavoidable tide of wealth. As an innate gift, the class also barred financial loss. Nothing would drop from his corpse if he died, while incredible luck and unmatched charisma granted massive plus 60 boosts, making his fortune translate into uncanny luck and sudden, alluring presence. The class's divine power converted every million gold spent into one random stat point, up to a high daily cap, turning lavish spending into raw strength. His active ability, Money Shield, formed a shield equal to 10% of his current gold with no cooldown. It was immune to shield breaks and instant death effects, though any damage taken cost him gold proportionally. He realized the upgrade was ludicrously powerful. Endless fortune alone guaranteed a steady daily income increase, and he imagined even the richest mogul would have to acknowledge his advantage. A system announcement confirmed his new class as Beast God Tamer and listed several powerful level 2 innate talents. Divine power granted him a divine body and doubled his ultimate growth potential by 200%. Mana source fused him deeply with divine energy, raising spirit, strength, constitution, and agility by 100% each. The Beast God equipment set surfaced crafting blueprints, Beast God's claws and the helmet of the ancient god, thanks to his divine affinity. His beasts were surrounded by a Beast God aura that boosted their stats by 50%. Beast God's command made his control over beasts unparalleled, though the notice strangely stated that all beasts gained 0% of his total final stats. The unlimited beast's talent revealed he had mastered true beast taming. All non-mythic beasts could be upgraded by 1 grade. He stared at the list, stunned. This was utterly insane. He realized that, with the unlimited beast's talent, a king-class beast could be raised to mythic. The hidden class felt terrifyingly powerful, and a sharp pang of envy pricked him at the thought. Then he noticed the egg move and froze, unsure whether it had actually shifted or if he was imagining things. Hope flared in his chest as he dared to think that his little phoenix might be about to hatch. A timer confirmed the hatch in 72 hours, the sudden surge in his divine power had likely triggered the process. Relieved and excited, he decided to head home and wait it out.